Sustainability. Alejandro Barrios Noya is the director of the NGO Instituto Politécnico Tomás Katari in Bolivia, which is a partner of Canadian Feed the Children. He's a Bolivian economist with postgraduate degrees in business management and administration, public policy, and ethics for the Global South. Alejandro brings years of experience in the non-profit sector and grassroots groups movements. He was a Latin American director of IBON International, executive secretary for People's Coalition on Food Sovereignty for Latin America and the Caribbean, and general secretary for the rural sector of the Alliance of Civil Society Organizations for the Effective Development in Latin America and the Caribbean. He was part of the Bolivian state representatives who participated in the Conference of the Parties at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP19. And in the subsequent conferences, Alejandro represented groups of civil society. He participated in the discussions of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development while coordinating the regional campaign of the People's Goals for Sustainable Development. As a professor, he taught sociology at the University of San Francisco de Asís and climate change at the University Cordillera in La Paz, Bolivia. So I'm going to turn turn it over to Alejandro to kick us off with the presentations. And again, just a reminder about translation as well, as Jackie had mentioned earlier. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you very much. I will do my presentation in Spanish, so I please request all the participants to use the interpretation option.
I'd like to thank for the opportunity to share with you this presentation, and I was sharing also the short video with the indigenous peoples. They use the pututu, and this is the way they call for reflection and dialogue. Also, here we have the coca leaf that is sacred for our indigenous peoples. They allow us to ask Mother Earth a space for dialogue. I was also saying that the IPTK, our institution, is an NGO, experience of 46 years already, working mainly in the deprived areas of the country, in the north of Potosí and in the city of Sucre. Our population, the target population that we identify with, is very diverse. Nevertheless, the indigenous peoples and the agricultural, the rural areas are our main population, and we have devoted all our efforts, institutional efforts, to them. Our indigenous peoples have suffered. When IPTK was created, they were suffering the absence of the state to meet their needs. Especially, we identified in that moment 4 key needs or very hard situations for them: poverty, misery, hunger, corruption, and exploitation against the mining from the indigenous communities. So this way, the IPTK was created as a political and social instrument in order to meet those needs of the indigenous population. 2 facts that can support this very harsh reality all those years. In Bolivia, in the rural areas, the life expectancy was 35 years. Currently, I am 35 years old, so this could be the last years of my life in that era. Another striking issue from these municipalities, 500 out of 1,000 inhabitants used to die easily. So half of the population didn't even reach 1 year old of life. This is why we established 4 working strategic working lines, and in order to provide a better life for indigenous peoples. The first strategic line of work, as showed in the screen, is the revolution of knowledge. So we will focus on the work we conduct, because the process of reconciliation or decolonization involves going beyond inclusion in the state system, in the regulation system. It means that we should generate a space for indigenous peoples to be valued as a historical subject of the country, and also to include the way they understand life and the world and their relationships and the society, as they have practiced this for hundreds, thousands of years. So our institution has focused on revolution of knowledge to deal with the battles in the ideological aspect, in order to build this cumulative knowledge that was imposed through the colony, but also it has been strengthened through the ideological apparatus all over these years. So we focus on this aim because we want the indigenous peoples to propose a new way of relationship with Mother Earth, a new way of producing, creating a community. The second area, or the second strategic line for us, is Mother Earth. So we are working here mainly in order to strengthen a community-based economy that was practiced for years. And apart from that, we wanted to achieve that the agricultural production in the country meets the objectives of the indigenous cosmovision. We shouldn't have a view of industry conceiving production as a straightforward line. We need to produce massively, as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and with the less cost as possible. So with the indigenous cosmovision conceives this process as something cyclical. We want to battle, we want to defeat climate change from the proposal of an alternative economical model different to the global model, because the global model is shifting us towards the destruction of the planet, the Mother Earth. The third strategic working line of our institute is work with the youth and women. So the cross-cutting work of gender equality is not only important, but also it's a need, and we need to pay attention to women's needs. We need to empower women, and they should assume their economic role and a political representation as well for women. The last strategic working line in the Institute is in the health sector, and this is one of the most important tasks that we have performed all over the last 46 years. It is striking to see how many people used to die 4 years ago in Bolivia, the life expectancy. So the work that we have developed is a sign of pride for us, because, for example, in the province of Huchayanca, where we work in this project, in 1980, it was considered the last province in terms of health status in the country. So Huchayanta was one of the was enduring this one of the worst situations in the country, and but they started to build. We started to build on medical centers, healthcare centers, primary attention centers, and also clinics. So we provided training for the members of indigenous communities, and we proposed proposed different initiatives so that people access health services. So after all these years, now we are the #1 province in the country regarding the fight against malaria. So this effort has been recognized by the United Nations Development Program as one of the example success stories in Latin America. I wanted to share that this is the work that we conduct, and also we focus our energy and our efforts working with the indigenous peoples. I'd like to share with you the context, the Bolivian context regarding the indigenous peoples. I am sure not all the participants know very well the Bolivian reality, and this is why I take the time to complement this presentation with the context setting about these the indigenous peoples in Bolivia. Indigenous peoples in our country, in Bolivia, are currently formed by they comprise 36 nations. So they started when the Republic was born, and at that time, 70% of Bolivian population was indigenous. We have 100,000 people from the Creole population. So I would like to highlight this distribution because in 1925, when this republic was founded, the decision of creating a constitution for the state, establishing all these forms of composition of the society, had excluded already 96% of the population because the indigenous peoples didn't have any power of decision or voting. People, women, children didn't have economic status in the society. So only 40,000 people that were upper classes or medium intermediate classes and who were able to read, they were able to vote and take decisions for the country. So the Republic of Bolivia was created excluding most of the population, 96% of the population.
And you can move 2 slides, please. Retomo. Bolivia, como decía, en 1825 había nacido bajo esas.
So Bolivia was born in 1825 under these characteristics, and it was a sequence of these fights, reivindications, indigenous reivindications and claims that had this history in the country. And now I like to refer to a benchmark, historical benchmark that leads us to the rebuilding or refoundation of the country. And this is formed through a new political constitution of the state as a plurinational state. And this is more than only one rhetoric and narrative, because apart from being founded under the conception that we are not unitary, we are plurinational state, this centers the presence of 36 indigenous nations that have the right of self-determination and an autonomous process of definition of their own ways of living in this country. And I think for Bolivia, this has been a very important focus that I should acknowledge is not something that is finished. We are now in the middle of this process, the consolidation of this plurinational state, where peoples, indigenous peoples, finally recognized as a historical subject. And also, it also implies the recognition of the regulatory recognition of the indigenous peoples, and also this proposal of a model, an alternative development model, and a different cosmovision, and their own philosophy, the well-living. And I will finish with this. This is a proposal And the reflection that mainly recognizes that the indigenous peoples have some important views for Bolivia and for the world. One example, giving Mother Earth and turning them into a subject of right.
A la madre tierra como un objeto que hay que explotar. Nosotros, desde los pueblos,
to consider Mother Earth as somewhere to explore. Here in Bolivia, in Peru, in Ecuador, we believe Mother Earth is subject to our rights, to the basic rights, and we have to respect her. We have to live in harmony. We also need to find a way to relate to the earth in a community way and not necessarily in a globalized way. The current challenges are many right now. To defend our national resources, which are essential so we could have a dignified life. And this is what I would like to finish with. Cooperation and development is a very good support, so we can provide the indigenous peoples with a dignified life. But this has to come with the self-determination of the indigenous peoples. With their knowledge, they will be able to figure out their own future with our help. So with this, I will finish, and I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Gracias, Alejandro. I think that was a very, very interesting look at IPTK Bolivia and bringing perspectives of your organization working from multiple indigenous communities and with international partnerships. So thank you very much.